Today we will be in Chapter 2, Section 7, Ratios and Proportions. Our two topic objectives today will be to apply the concept of ratios in a real-world context, and then to solve proportion equations using cross-multiplication. Chapter 2, Section 7, Ratios and Proportions. First thing we need to do is we need to define what a ratio is. So a ratio is a quotient of two quantities. Ratios provide a way, to compare two numbers or quantities. And there's three different ways you're going to kind of see ratios. You'll see it as like A compared to B with the word 2 spelled out, or you'll see it as A and then colon B, which is also A compared to B, or more commonly you're gonna see it written as a fraction, A over B. But those are the three ways you're going to see a ratio written. So you're going to have some number compared to some other number. Okay, so here's an example. This example is straight off of your homework. We have 10 gallons to 63 gallons. So we need to write this as a ratio. So you could actually write it three different ways. You're going to have 10 to 63, or you can have 10 to 63, or you can have 10 to 63. Please note though that these need to be simplified. Need to be simplified. Like our 10 over our 63, that needs to be a simplified fraction, which it is in this case. And this is going to be, it's going to tell you to write it in a fraction form. If it wants it written like this, it will provide the colon for you. And then you'll never actually type this in on your homework. But you can see it three different ways. So for all of our purposes though, for these assignments right now, we're going to just do the fractions. So let's do another one. We'll do 7 quarts to 14 quarts. So if we're writing it as a fraction, that would be 7 over 14. But is that simplified? No, 7 goes into 14. So we need to reduce that. And so our ratio is 1 to 2. Now, notice though, on these problems up here, we had gallons to gallons, and we had quarts to quarts. So we have to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. We're not going to compare apples to oranges. So that means we'd have to make these be of the same thing before we could actually compare them. So here's an example of that. If we have 4 hours to 30 minutes. We need to write this in a ratio. But the problem is we have hours and we have minutes. So what we need to do is we need to convert those 4 hours to minutes before we can do this. So I'm going to show you the easiest way to do this, and it's also the way that you'll do it in your science classes, like if you take chemistry. So let's have 4 hours. And we need the hours to go away, and we need to end up with minutes on this side, okay? So we need the hours to go away, so we're going to multiply it by something to get the hours to go away. So we need hours on bottom, because if you multiply, you remember fractions, you have hours on top and hours on bottom, they would go away. So we need to get to minutes. So how many minutes are in an hour? There's 60 minutes in an hour. So right here, our hours would go away, And our answer would end up being minutes, which is what we wanted. So then we just work the problem out. We have 4 times 60, which is 240. And then we'd have 1 times 1 on bottom, which would give us the 1. So this is called a conversion factor. Conversion factor. And you'll do a lot of this in your science classes. This is how we get from hours to minutes. So now we have 240 minutes to 30 minutes. So that means we'd have 240 over 30. Is that simplified? No. Instantly you should notice that they both end in 0, so that means we can divide both by 0. Or excuse me, don't divide by 0, you can't do that. And divide by 10, and that'll leave us with 24 over 3. Does 3 go into 24? Yes, it does. It goes in 8 times, so you're going to have 8 over 1. In the case when you're doing ratios, you do want to go ahead and leave that 1 down there, because that's what you're showing is your ratio. And a lot of times if you're going to have it with a 1, you're going to see them write it with a colon. Again, if you need to use a colon, they're going to give you a colon on your answer problems. And I'll work your homework here in a little bit and I'll show you what I mean by that. Alright, let's do one more with a conversion factor because I know that that might be a little bit confusing. So let's do 2 feet to 7 inches. So we need to convert both of these into the same thing. So let's convert our feet into inches. So we have 2 feet. We're going to multiply that. And we want to come out with inches on this side. So if there's feet on top, we need a feet on bottom, or a foot on bottom, to get the feet to go away. And in 1 foot, there is how many inches? There's 12 inches. So our feet would go away, and that would leave us with inches. 2 times 12 will give us 24. So now we have 24 inches to 7 inches, which will be 24 over 7. And that does not reduce. So that would be our final answer. Again, you could see it as 24:7. All right. Let's move on. There is a problem on your homework that I'm specifically going to address right here, and I will work it out as well for you. Actually, I'm not going to, but it's going to talk about gear ratios. And so I wanted you to know that when you're doing gear ratios, you're going to have the driving gear teeth number on top, and then you're going to have the driven gear teeth number on bottom. These ones are really easy, these problems are, because it's going to just tell you what those two things are. The problem's going to look like the driving gear is 64 teeth, and the driven gear is 8 teeth. So that's what the problem's going to look like. So then you just need to do your ratio. So the driving gear's on top, so it'll be 64. The driven gear's on bottom, which is 8. That's not reduced, so we do need to reduce it. So it'd be 8 over 1, or 8:1. So this is just a specific type of ratio problem that would come up on your homework, and I didn't want it to confuse you, so I wanted to make sure I specifically addressed it. So the first 5 homework problems that you're going to have today will be like these. Just simply you might have to do a little bit of converting, but then it's just writing out your ratio. The other 5 of your homework problems are going to be solving with cross multiplication. So we're going to do some cross multiplying. And these are problems that look like A over B equals C over D. And the way that you solve these is you're going to take your A times your D, and that's going to equal your C times your B, not D. A lot of times you'll hear these referred to as the butterfly problems or butterfly multiplication, because when you do these cross multiplications, it kind of looks like a butterfly. So if you've ever done butterfly multiplication, it's cross multiplication. So here's an example. We have x over 3 equals 35 over 15. So we need to figure out what our x is. So we're going to cross multiply. We're going to take our x times our 15. So we'll have 15x equals our 3 times our 35. So I'm just going to simplify, and that's going to be 105 on the right. I need to get our x by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides by 15, and that's going to leave me with x equals 7. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to bump that. So let's do another one. Example. We have a negative 8 over 3 equals 64 over x. So we're going to cross multiply. So negative 8 times x, and then that's equal to 3 times 64. I'm going to take 3 times 64, which will give me 192. Need to get the x by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides by negative 8. So x equals, we have a positive number divided by a negative, so our answer will be negative. 192 divided by 8 will be 24. So our x is negative 24. One more. We have 33 over 3 equals 165 over t. Cross multiply. We have 33t equals 3 times 165. 33t equals 495. So I need to divide both sides by 33 to get my t by itself. And that'll leave me with t equals 15. So that's how you use cross multiplication. But what is cross multiplication good for? We're going to do a couple of applications of it so you can see where you would actually use this. So, applications of cross multiplication. And these are going to be word problems, but they use cross multiplication. So, here's an example. It says use 5 teaspoons of insecticide per gallon of water. A lot of times you'll see that whenever you have to mix or dilute something. So these are actually real world problems. So it wants to know how much insecticide should you use for 10 gallons. Okay, so we're going to use 5 teaspoons for 1 gallon. We do know that much, 5 teaspoons in 1 gallon. But we don't know how many teaspoons in 10 gallons. That's what we want to find out. So hopefully me writing it like that, you can see where our cross multiplication is going to come in handy. We're going to take our 5 times our 10, because we're going to cross, and we're going to set that equal to our x times our 1, which is just x. So we have 50 teaspoons is needed for 10 gallons of water. Let's do another one. This one's for all you moms or grandmas out there, or just anybody that likes to bake. We're going to use 2 teaspoons of vanilla per batch of cookies. How much vanilla is needed for 13 batches? Okay, again, we know we're going to use 2 teaspoons in 1 batch. So we're going to put 2 teaspoons over 1 batch. But we don't know how many teaspoons we're going to use in 13 batches. So we put an X there instead. And then we're going to cross multiply. So we're going to have 2 times 13 equals the 1 times our X, which will give us 26 teaspoons of vanilla for 13 batches of cookies. Alright, here's the final application problem. And this one I'm going to put a star over here because this always shows up on the homework. Or not on the homework, excuse me. Of course it's going to be on the homework. Always shows up on the final. So you need to make sure if you can't do any of the other ones, you can do this one. Always shows up on final. Alright, so here's the problem. We need to exchange $300 for pesos. The rate is $1 to 10.584 pesos. How many pesos will you get? And you need to round it to the nearest decimal. This problem shows up on every final exam, so you need to really make sure that you know how to do this. So it says we need to change $300 into pesos, but we don't know how many pesos we're going to get for that $300. But we do know that for $1, we're going to get 10.584 pesos. So we're going to cross multiply. we're going to take the 300 times our 10.584, and that's going to equal the number of pesos that we're going to get. So if you punch that into your calculator, you get 3,175.2 equals our x. So you're going to get 3,175.2 pesos for $300. Alright, so let's move on and do some homework. Alright, so let's get your homework open for 2.7, and I'm going to work a few of the problems for you. And I decided I would work the driving gear problem, even though I don't think you guys really need me to. But it is the most unique problem that you will have. So if you open up your homework, go to problem number 4, and it says find the gear ratio, and then write the ratio as some quantity to 1. So we have the driving gear, and that equals 25 teeth. And we have the driven gear, and that equals 5 teeth. And if you remember, we need to have the driving gear over the driven gear. So that means we need to place 25 over 5. And is that simplified? No, because 5 comes out of both of those. So we have 5 over 1. Which is good because this one specifically said that we need to write the ratio as some quantity to 1. So that means we're going to write 5:1. And it's already got the colon and the 1 in there. All we need to do is type in the 5. Let's hit enter. Good job. Alright, let's see. Alright, let's do a cross multiplication problem. So let's do number 5. Let me pull up my page for you. So we have n over 12 equals 81 over 9. And we need to find out what n is. So we're going to cross multiply. We're going to take n times 9. So we have 9n equals 12 times 81. So we have our 9n equals 12 times 81. That equals 972. We need to get n by itself. So we're going to divide both sides by 9. And that gives us n equals 108. So let's type that in. 108. Enter. Good job. I think all the rest of these are cross multiplying. But let's look. Oh, there's insecticide and pesos. So I just worked these problems out exactly, just with slightly different numbers. So you can do your peso problem and you can do your insecticide problem. And here's more of these gallon ones. This one is a ratio one, so I'll do number 1 with you so you see how to put it in. Number 1 says we have 65 gallons to 61 gallons. So we need to type this in, and it says type it in as an integer or a simplified fraction. So that means they want this one in fraction form, which would be 65 over 61. So 65 is or 61 is a prime number, so that's a good thing for us. So we just have to type 65 over 61. Enter. Well done. We got it right. So hopefully these problems don't seem too daunting and you're able to get through them pretty easily. Don't forget though that there is a peso problem on your final exam, so make sure you understand how to work this problem. Good luck on your homework and good luck on your quizzes.